Flynn is in that category of brilliance and could kick spectacular points and goals, but also was willing to do that kind of work, you know. So it's often, I hate when you call those three players working wing forwards. That's bullshit. That's an insult. Connon's a working wing forward.
Can't argue with that.
No, but you get my point. You get my point. Like, you're completely doing these three in particular a massive disservice to call them working half forwards. They're exceptional wing forwards that also would work for you.
Yeah.
The GAA Hour is sponsored by Paddy Power. For exclusive content from their GAA ambassadors and other high-profile contributors, check out news.paddypower.com.
Alright, so this is the football show, lads, and the Sunday game schedule has been released this week, and for football lovers, which we all are, never mind those hurling snobs, I've done the hurling show already, that's grand, they're delighted, and he actually had something to complain about in the hurling show because they're showing all Munster games and only 3 Leinster games, 9 Munster games, so I will find something to give out about, but football fans really have something to give out about. In one way, do I blame RTE? No, on one hand, that's what people want to see. On the other hand, they're a public service broadcaster, so are numbers supposed to be important to them when it's taxpayer money? I'm not so sure. But so they've gone to town on Munster hurling and Leinster hurling. Football there's only one football match until the middle of June. Championship starts in May, and that is the Ulster game.
Ulster semi-final.
Ulster semi-final, which will be. But that's a great game. They had to do that. Then the last 3 weeks of June, we get the Connacht final, the Munster final, and the Leinster final. Similar to last year, only one football game in the first 2 months that isn't a provincial final. Mad, isn't it? Like, I mean, the big one for me is Kildare Dublin. How would anybody, now Sky might show it, how could anybody not want that game? That's a huge game in the football championship. And again, GAA selling rights without any sort of stipulations of, okay, you have to do a magazine show, you have to do an analysis show, this is the product we want if we're going to sell it to you. Surely there has to be a decent split between hurling and football to reflect both codes.
I don't know why they're not sold separately. Like, you know, who wants the hurling rights, who wants the football rights? Like, I think it is insane. So we're in the biggest moment now of the biggest competition, the most popular sport in Ireland.
Yeah. Now, in fairness, it is shite, the provincials. Like, I mean, I suppose like that's in RT's defence. In general, it is. But there's still matches that you might say it's shite, but there's still matches like Laois versus Westmeath, Laois or Westmeath versus Meath, Kildare Dublin. Now, that's just in Leinster. And that's just what immediately jumps to me that I'm interested in. So what might be shite to the general public, proper football fans are interested in all of the games.
It might be shite games that we might sort of pick apart and stuff, but it's still the fabric of Ireland.
Yeah.
Like, it's the most popular sport, and like for the first month, for the first 19 games, there's nothing. Last year there was one, I think it was Mayo Galway. And then there was nothing for another 3 weeks.
There was no Tyrone Monaghan, which was the big one.
Yeah,
back then
but that was the only game in May. There's no games in May this time. So the biggest sport in Ireland, the biggest competition is starting, and we're not going to get anything for 6 weeks.
Yeah. The annoying thing for me is that this caught me on the hop again, as in I should have known this was coming again last year. And then you see the schedule, like, why are there so little football games? Why isn't there any football games till the middle of June? And the thing is that, like, the schedule will catch some people on the hop, but I guarantee you they come around to the day that Dublin will play Kildare, if they get through, which they will. People are like, why the hell isn't Dublin Kildare on TV?
Yeah.
And they'll be caught out on the day, do you know what I mean? Even though we've kind of it's been flagged last year and it's been flagged with the schedule. But yeah, it's just a pity. Where's the football?
Because 2 years ago, Kildare obviously did well against Dublin in the Leinster final, had a terrible start and then matched Dublin for a lot of the game. Then they got shocked by Carlow last year. So like then they made Super 8s last year. So like that's a big game in Leinster, and Leinster Championship needs a little bit of it needs a good game, and that's not going to be on it. And then you'll have Meath, Westmeath or Laois who will probably play in the Leinster final then. And I don't think any three of them are as good as Kildare in championship football, and they could be well beaten by Dublin. And now what will be said about the Leinster Championship then? It's just a pity. Like, I mean, there's no doubt about that. It's definitely a pity. But then the hurling fans will start arguing that when July comes around, they're pushed to the side, and it's all about the Super 8s. So like it is difficult. But maybe sell it to separate broadcasts. Yeah. I often definitely think that when the next, and you heard me talking to Tom Ryan about this, lads, and he talking about the Joe McDonagh Cup, and he acted all surprised. I says, and would you not sell the Joe McDonagh Cup to Air Sport or to Virgin or to TG Car or something like that? Oh yeah, that's not a bad idea. What? Are you for real? So like, I mean, that wasn't around when they actually went into a 5-year contract knowing that the championship structure was up in the air. And John Horan, now we're going to talk about it in a minute, will probably get the Tier 2 through next year. And again, no provisions made with the broadcasters about how this changes. You know what I mean? For me, I'd rip up that 5-year contract next year and have to start fresh if the Tier 2 comes in, because it's just changed just so much from what that deal, when that deal was made. What's the point of that deal?
It can't change till 2021. Is that correct?
2022, is it?
2022, yeah. Because I was just like, so RTE have 25 exclusive games, right? And 9 of them are Munster Championship games. So more than a third of RTE's allowance of exclusive games is to the Munster Hurling Championship.
Yeah.
And like, you're on about the ridiculousness of not renegotiating that arrangement when the championship was changed. To think that like the Munster Hurling Championship, until the format was changed, only consisted of a maximum of 4 games, and now RTE are actually showing 9 games, and then they didn't even change the format to allow for that. That's a more than a 100% increase in the number of games in the Munster Championship alone.
Yeah.
And the fact that the contract wasn't redrawn just makes it just seem even more ridiculous.
It just does. And he's surprised at maybe what a great idea. Like, imagine going into the GAA with these ideas, like, wow. Well, we were just checking what we did last year.
Box tick.
Yeah, what a go-getter you are.
But you say about the
promotion.
You're talking about the Super 8, but I think it's only 4 games that RT are showing from that. Maybe an option of a 5th. The Hurling will probably get precedence there as well. So there's 12 Super 8 games, and only 4 tops 5 will be shown on RT as well. So that's another thing that wasn't brought into the thinking. Like, you know, the GAA did restructure it. They made the championship more sexy. Because it isn't RT's fault. They're just picking the best games, what people will watch most.
Yeah.
But here's an opportunity. Here's where the championship does get exciting, and we have restructured it. But even then, they're only showing 4.
Yeah. So BBC have come to the rescue for Ulster, at least. For everyone. BBC Northern Ireland. Do we have that? Is that just BBC, the normal BBC, or is?
Yeah, I think so.
Everyone is BBC Northern Ireland. So that's fantastic. They're showing some 2 live games: Antrim Tyrone, which isn't going to set the world alight, and Antrim versus Tyrone or Derry, which will be Tyrone. I just corrected myself there as Conan staring at me from the side. And then Fermanagh versus Donegal, and then they're showing a semi-final and the final, and then they're showing 2 deferred games, which is Tyrone Derry, Cavan Monaghan, which is a great local derby. That's the one that should be shown, and Down Armagh, which will be a very good game. So they're deferred, and they'll be making my life an awful lot easier, because if I don't want to crib about my own personal situation, but when I have to go to Kildare Dublin, I'm missing out on the hurling games on television, and then I'm chasing my tail until the next day trying to produce shows that I haven't seen, and it's just like, ugh, Jesus. But then it is good to get out to the games as well, I suppose. So look, it's not an easy fix, but I want to see some effort being made to fix it. Not just what was done last year, because usually I start off this show before the New York game, and now we've got London Galway thrown in. We've 2 games to start off. At least that's improved it a little bit, but neither of them are on the television. No. So, like, I think TG Cahir made efforts to get it. They didn't get it. I'm sure there's a load of red tape around RT flexing their muscles, and RT don't want to waste one of their games during the summer of their 25 to give to this. And there is an argument for this year. Obviously, they're going to be 2 one-sided games, so they're not as attractive as other years. I can see why nobody wanted to touch off it. But this is my argument. These are being sold all wrong. They're being given exclusive rights to Sky and RTE. Why can't you give RTE first choice, Sky second, Virgin third, Air fourth, and TG Cahir fifth? TG Cahir third, actually, because they're there all year. And tier it down. So say this weekend, now Sky or RTE, the 2 broadcasters, don't want them. First choice, second choice, don't want them. So now, who wants them with the 3 that's left? On any given Sunday, RT always go, I know this from News Talk, they always go Munster hurling. That's borne out by this. Sky, what have you got this weekend? Well, we've got a hurling game on as well. Right, Virgin, Air, TG Cahir, what football game do you want to show? Because there's going to be people who want to see football. Why can't it be tiered like that, based on like a hierarchy? So RT get what they want. So they're the main, contract holder, the main media partner, so they have the first pick. And how can they complain when they get the best game that they see as being the best game? The only people I see losing out here are the viewers. You know, I don't see viewers getting to see any football. Whereas if you sell, and again for the GAA, it's huge extra money that they're going to be selling.
We didn't do that last year.
It's a no-brainer. We didn't. Okay, so we'll just move on then. We'll just move on. So the tickets for Mayo. So we didn't do it last year. That's the end of it. So John Prenti has been on. And there's 10,000 Mayo fans going over here, Connor. Like, this is getting out of control. Like, this is incredible. So
he suggests if there are 10,000, but I think there are 10,000.
So the New York had to say, apparently the GAA wanted to bring this to Croke Park to accommodate all the Mayo fans, and New York team said New York or nowhere, and now we're stuck with a tiny little ground over in the Big Apple, and now the Mayo fans
Mayo, isn't it?
yeah, so now they're going to have to drink cans in Times Square and watch it, and Mayo fans I think are falling into this category. Like, I love Mayo fans because they're fantastic. I'm just worried that Mayo fans are going to start falling into the Liverpool trap, the Celtic trap, the Munster rugby trap and the Ireland soccer trap of starting to call themselves the best fans in the world. Because last year for Newbridge or nowhere, it's not often I go up against Mayo fans. I don't often feel their wrath. It's usually other counties because I kind of root for Mayo to win in All-Ireland. But I felt their wrath for Newbridge or nowhere because I went against what they wanted, which was in Croke Park, and they have a fair old group of Muppets on Twitter on Twitter, like every county has, but they were calling themselves the greatest fans in the world, and if you call yourself the greatest fan, then you're not the greatest fan. It's just annoying. So Conor, is there a worry?
That's a scurrilous accusation. I want absolutely nothing to do with it, buddy.
You have to go home to Mayo here.
Listen, you make a good point there. I think well, we can bandwagon with the best of them. I think we've hopped on the bandwagon full swing the last few years, but I was even actually only thinking this morning of the parallels between Mayo fans and Liverpool fans, because we've been the best team to never win an All-Ireland, and then this year Liverpool are probably going to get 97 points and not win the title, and it's really like there should be a special moral award handed out to Mayo and Liverpool as a result.
Yeah, but neutrals are rooting for Mayo. I don't know one neutral you're rooting for Liverpool.
yeah, that's true. But just on the tickets, anecdotally, like John Prenti suggests that there might be 10,000. There seems to be 10,000 or more, and the majority of people I was talking to anyway are going over without tickets, so be interesting to see what happens, because like the clubs only, we're an intermediate club, we got 8 tickets, senior clubs get 10, so if you flesh that out for the rest of the county, you're talking about 50 clubs, an average around 8 to 10 tickets. There's probably around 500.
How will you give them
tickets
out as a matter of interest? A lottery? A lotto?
I'm on the executive of the club, and I wasn't actually in on the meetings for the distributions of the tickets, but I imagine it was all fair and above board, Willie. So I think it was a lottery, yeah, because I know there's a lot of people going from the club, so there would have been plenty of demand. But I think people that I was talked to, because the distribution of the tickets was mostly handled by New York, and they've got tickets through contacts out there and stuff like that. So,
but they're more or less it's not the end of the world if they don't get into
I
the game.
think so,
They won't get to see it, but it's not a game that the result really is questioned. No disrespect to New York, it's more going over, and being in around the Irish bars and having the crack.
McLean Avenue maybe, or something like that to gather afterwards and stuff.
Gardaí have advised Mayo fans avoid a ticket to not show up in New York because it doesn't have the infrastructure for it.
Could be trouble outside
but
the ground.
They are making tickets available at Gaelic Park on the Sunday morning, which I think could be a recipe for disaster. You could have Mayo fans camping out outside Gaelic Park on the Saturday night because there's so many of them going over without a ticket.
And they're putting up bleachers. I had to Google what bleachers were. Like they're the temporary terraces that you see at the American football high school games. Yeah, bleachers. So anyways, that was a new one. Karl Compton has been talking about playing for New York. So he's saying you've got no league or challenge games. You're depending on in-house games. So we know Karl Compton played with Roscommon last year. He says you never know what will happen on any given day, but expectations aren't crazy over here, to be honest. We'll just try and stay in the game for as long as possible and see where it takes us. So we have Shane Hogan coming up on the show in part 2. He is a New Yorker who's playing for New York. So it's not that common for a homegrown player to be making the team, and he makes it ever since his debut, and he's playing in around he's playing midfield or in around that area, and he's supposed to be a good player. But that's the thing, there's been a turnover of 11 players from last year, and we know how well they performed last year. They performed really well the last 3 years really against Roscommon, fright. Sligo gave them a fright but ended up losing by 6 or 7 maybe, and then Leitrim to extra time last year. The draw hasn't been kind to them this year, to build on it. They still have some good players, but it was some interesting statistics on it is that they're doing really well at underage. They send underage teams over to the Féile under 14, and they've gone from Division 5 to Division 1. I think 2017 they actually won the Féile. I think that might have been Division 2. But since joining the Iconic Championship in 1999, New York have used 217 players, and 60% of those have only played one competitive match. Only 11 have been New Yorkers. So, that is it. So, 205, just to break that down, of the 270 players, 205 of New York's 217 players have been from Ireland, and 130 of them have only played one match. So those stats aren't great. If they're trying to, there's some more New Yorkers on the team this year, but it doesn't seem to be translating from the underage, which is going well, Maybe that's the same in every county. You lose players, and maybe more so in New York because it's all so spread out, and you get a bit older and you don't need to put in that commitment because you're coming from all different parts of a huge city, and you just maybe don't need that. But like, I mean, it doesn't translate. Basically, the point I'm trying to make is the team is always dominated by who decides to travel to New York that summer.
Year, I think was that Eamon Donoghue's piece, and he had a couple of lines with CJ Malloy, who used to play for New York, and he's a New Yorker, and he was saying about any Paddy who's kicked a couple of points in a club game is just raced in and they're just held in this higher respect then in New York.
Yeah, I've seen that. Like, I mean, that's true. Like, I have seen it, but to be fair, in general, they are better. Like, let's be honest. I do see his point. Like, you know, but at the same time, generally they're better players. Yeah,
but then it just doesn't make it easy. I suppose you're talking about a turnover of 11, and I remember you were talking to Justin O'Halloran 2 years ago maybe, and he was going on about what they have to do to go to training, so they don't train as often as a county team would. And
and again, no challenge matches and no league.
Yeah. Daniel Flynn trained at the start of the year, he's not there. And, must be very frustrating.
Johnny Glynn trains with them now. You'd be hoping he might kick a bit and then he doesn't. You know, that's that disappointment. So, like, I mean, it's definitely not easy. And then last year they had Tom Caniff and Jamie Clark and a really good team. Now this year they've Karl Compton, and like, I mean, depending on what report you read, Sean Hurley from Kildare is out there. They have is it Mernon from Down? Is not Mernon? I can't.
He's
think
Armagh.
Andrew Mernon, I was thinking.
Mernon. Madine. Do you remember him playing? He's out there. He's
Nathan.
their captain.
Is it Nathan Madine?
I'm not sure his first name. Jeez, when I'm struggling here, let's not guess the first name. Let's not guess the first name. It's Madine. But anyways, so that's it. We'll talk a little bit about that in Paddy Power predictions. But definitely New York are up to it. So John Horan has fleshed out a little bit what he wants in his tier 2 competition. So like I said, this is going to happen next year, whether we like it or not. I like it, but after reading John Horan fleshing it out, I don't like it. So John Horan has done exactly what I didn't want him to do. So, and it just seems to be my opinion against what they do. It always seems to be conflicting. So he says the first option put to counties competing in Division 3 of the Alliance League at a meeting a fortnight ago was a competition that begins after counties exit the provincial championship, while the second proposal was to allow counties to take part in the early rounds of the All-Ireland qualifiers before entering a Tier 2 competition. So Horan says he favours option 1. He says you play in your provincial championship, and if you don't get to the provincial final, then you go into the second tier competition straight away. There will be a maximum of 4 rounds in that competition, and if you win it, you will get automatic qualification into the qualifiers the next year, regardless of whether you're in Division 3 or 4. So, like, I mean, is this like 3 or 4 at a meeting? Like, I'm not sure I fully understand this. So if you were to base this off this year's championship, Tyrone or Donegal would go back into the second tier, right? Because they're not making their provincial final. No, so they would walk that.
It seems to be the Divisions 3 and 4 teams.
Yeah, they go into the qualifiers. If you're in Division 3 or 4, you go into the...
okay, back into the Tier 2. Yeah. The only thing I don't like about that is obviously the prestige of going into the qualifiers. It's hard to keep people together. Going back into the Tier 2 might be that little bit harder. But obviously, since I've misread what he said, I'm just going to stop talking now and let you take over.
Yeah, I think that option 1 would be a tough one, because... like Derry are playing Tyrone, saying just not at that level, but Derry over the last few years, even with weakened teams, have gotten to round 4 of the qualifiers, and actually it was Kildare and Tipperary who stopped them getting into a quarter final. It was on an all day they might have beaten those teams. So like it's a bit shit to think if Derry played Tyrone, which they do again and seem to do every year, then they're in Tier 2 automatically. Whereas if it was a different system, they might go on through the qualifiers and get closer to Croke Park.
What I just can't understand is why can't 3 and 4 start in the Division 2 All Ireland? And Division 1 and 2 start in Division 1 All Ireland, and stop this messing with it. Because if you give them a flavour of the Division 1 All Ireland, they're not going to want to go into the second one. Yeah. But if they have to start in the second one, they've no choice, but they can win it and work their way into the first one. So that seems like, why is there such reluctance to do that?
Well, it comes back to any time anyone tries to get a motion through Congress, whatever motion they think of, they dumb it down a bit or dilute a bit, so they think it might give it a chance. So obviously John Horan thinks that if he comes up with some conditions, that the Division 3 and Division 4 teams that are voting for this proposal might go for it more so than they would with a complete break, which I think is the sensible thing to do. Get rid of the provincials altogether and just start it as Division 2 All Ireland. But even the kind of second proposal, then, like, I was confused even reading as well. So like if you win the Tier 2 competition, and even if you're Division 3 or 4, and you compete in your provincial championship the following year and you lose, you're still in the tier 1 competition. It was just really confusing for me.
Yeah,
anyway,
that was messy. So he prefers option 1 at least.
It's a lesser
anyways.
of two evils, I think.
Lesser of two. So you could, for example, have in Munster, you'll have Clare. Oh no, Clare play Kerry. So you could have Tipperary, who are now Division 3, get into a Munster final. So they're into the Division 1. Then you could have in Leinster, Laois, for example, like last year. So you could end up in the tier 2 competition with maybe 11 teams. There might be one left over. You know what I mean? There might be one left over.
Tommy Murphy almost again.
Then you're looking at Tommy Murphy levels. Now maybe 11 might be too, like they're out of 16. But could be 13. You know, there could be at least an uneven number that could get messy.
Yeah.
Just bloody, why are you messing with it for?
Yeah, like I actually agree with you in a sense. Like I don't think John Horn should be looking at anything unless he's looking at changing the provincial structure. And if that means like what you say, Willie, having a tier 1 and a tier 2, or like what I say, having groups, and then if you don't qualify through the group, you go into the B. But that's the problem. Like that's the problem with fixtures. That's the problem with the imbalance and who people have to play and how teams get dropped into Division 3, or sorry, round 3 and round 4. The provincial system is the problem, and I think this is just another ruse to get us talking about something else, and we're sort of looking now at option 1 and option 2.
Yeah.
And here's another thing I wonder about. Like, I obviously be very respectful of John Horan. He's the president of the GAA, and I've met him on several occasions, and I like John Horan. But who gives him the right to just think up of one and push it through? Like, surely there has to be some consultation with all the sporting bodies, with the GPA, the CPA. What knock-on effect is this going to have on club? Why is he just coming with this like Pádraig Duffy did?
Yeah.
And suddenly everyone has to go along with this because this is what he wants. This is just his subjective opinion, and maybe one or two yes men inside in his offices. No, let's have an independent committee to run the rule over your because this is what has us into shit with the Super 8s and the new structure with the April for clubs, because Pádraig Duffy's brainchild, with nobody inside telling him, you know, no, I don't think that's the right thing to do. Like, I mean, surely there should be some external committee that has to okay some of these.
We've only had one Super 8 competition so far. There's 2 left, and we already have the president of the GA looking at a different competition.
And that has to be reviewed, right? So that whole thing has to be reviewed. So you have the president trying to push through a tier 2 before all that has been... What kind of a mess is it, lads? Honest to God, like, it really... Anyway, some news. Peter Crowley's done his cruciate. Nightmare for Kerry. He's the only defender who played all 8 games, who started all 8 games of their Alliance League matches. And good news is Gavin White. Peter Keane thinks that Gavin White will be back for the championship, so that's good news for him. Paul Flynn, obviously the big news, has retired. Unfortunately for Paul, he's back. It was giving him problems, and he ended up hurting his hamstring in a club match last week. And I'd say Paul, just after a couple of years of bloody frustration, just went, feck this, I'm retiring, out of pure anger and frustration, being the competitor that he is. Because like even I'm looking at Paul going, sit out on the bench and get your 5 in a row and just have them. But then again, what does Paul... another side of me thinks some people are obsessed with medals. Like, and I can compare this to Paul, obviously on a much lower level, in that I look back on my career now and I have 6 county titles. I left for Parnells, then came back, won 1, and then fell out with a manager, and I was gone then, right? So I look back, I have 6 county titles. The lads my age in Portlaoise would have 13 or 14. What difference does that make now to me? I couldn't give a shit. The winning, the enjoyment of the medals is the winning of them. So if you're not part of the winning of them, it's only a number at the end of your career, and you need a real stupid ego to go, well, I'm the most successful player, you know, in my club. Who gives a shit?
It'd just be a quiz question, basically.
Yeah, that's all it is.
That's it. Like,
So he's right. Now, in fairness, the 5 in a row is such a momentous thing, and he has been kind of a panel player because probably of injury and not able to get a run of it for the last 2 years. So he could maybe have sat out the rest of the year. But look, I just think the competitor, again, that he is he just wasn't able to do that.
Yeah, but is anyone going to say, like, if Dublin went on to win the 5 in a row, is anyone going to say, well, Paul Flynn wasn't a member of the 5, you know, wasn't a crucial member of the 5 in a row because he wasn't there for the 5th one? I don't think so. Like, when you look back on it in years to come, Paul Flynn will be one of the standout players from that era. Absolutely. Like, I was just thinking,
now he hasn't played much in the last 2 years.
I know, but like, but he's still a crucial member of that, like the Dublin, that period of time from 2011 to 2019, let's say. And I was even thinking this morning, just like after I'd seen that he retired, that to me, like, he was one of 3 to me, he was one of 3 half forwards that had kind of revolutionised the position after Brian Dooher and Paul Galvin, and just like turned it into like Paul Flynn made scoring 4 points from play as a wing forward a matter of routine, to the extent that like when he didn't do it, you were wondering, you nearly thought he had a bad game. Do you know that kind of way? But no, I think you're right. It's just with a combination of injuries and the frustrations of having time on the bench, he doesn't seem like that type of guy that would settle for that kind of in the long run, so he's probably best to just call it a day now. I'm
glad you compared him to Dewar and Paul Galvin, because sometimes I think because Paul Galvin was so good at getting in and getting breaks, people almost said, well, he's a working half forward. Paul Galvin was class. Paul Galvin could see a pass, he could make runs, he was a total footballer. Paul Flynn, Brian Dewar, because he liked to track back and tackle lads and double up on them, and sometimes you sell him short for some of the outrageous points that fella could kick. So he wasn't a working forward. He was a brilliant forward who could also do hard work for you. So you're really onto a winner. And Flynn is in that category of brilliance and could kick spectacular points and goals, but also was willing to do that kind of work, you know. So it's often, I hate when you call those 3 players working wing forwards. That's bullshit. That's an insult. Connon's a working wing forward.
Can't argue with that.
No, but you get my point. You get my point. Like, you're completely doing these 3 in particular a massive disservice to call them working half forwards. They're exceptional wing forwards that also would work for you.
It's Roy Keane syndrome. Like, you know, you remember him for his character and his doggedness and forget that he's one of the best midfielders ever. Like, you know, and that's the same with these boys. And like Paul Flynn, you're talking about, like, when he misses a couple of them, people be like, oh, he doesn't score not 4. He is one of the very few people who, when he hit those 40-yard shots from the right, and he usually went over, when they went wide, people were like, oh, for fuck's sake, Paul. And the Dublin fans were on his back a little bit, but you said he hardly played the last 2 years. I think the Roscommon game last year, which was a dead rubber, was the only championship match he has played in 2017 and 18.
Goal.
Or
started, sorry.
He got a brilliant goal in that, He was playing midfield that there. At least he had a midfield number on his back. So, that's it. So, like, he's going to be a big loss. He was talking on Game On last night, and he said, but it was quite emotional because they are your brothers, your friends, the guys you go to war with and respect so much. So it was a difficult thing to do, talking about his teammates. And it made me have a look down through his teammates' Twitter accounts to see would there be nice glowing tributes of their teammate who called them his brothers, his friends, the guys you go to war with and respect so much, and not one tribute. Like, the closest you get is Alan Brogan, who's now retired. None of his teammates have paid tribute to a fella who wore his heart on his sleeve and who was a leader and who was an outstanding player. And I think that's sad.
An instruction, was it?
Oh, absolutely, lads. Like, you think that all those lads don't want to pay tribute to, like, their friend and their teammate. That is poxy as far as I'm concerned, because Paul Flynn would have loved to have seen that publicly. It's all right getting a text, but it's also nice to see those tributes. I'm sure I never got them from your teammates on the day that you retire. And I think that's poxy, and that's Dublin's social media policy, and that's Jim Gavin. So Jim Gavin speaks on behalf of the whole panel in a statement. Pure Jim Gavin, formulaic kind of, you know, statement where he, on behalf of Dublin senior football team and the Dublin Gaelic Athletic Association, I would like to wish the very best to Paul as he announces his retirement for senior inter-county football. And it just goes on with kind of Jim Gavin, kind of corporate speak and no real personality in it. And I just think that's wrong. When a player like that retires, lift it. Who's going to care? Like, I mean, Jesus Christ, you want to be some cynical so-and-so to go, well, Jesus, the Dublin lads are all over Twitter, sure, they're 5 in rows, God. Do you know what I mean?
Do you wonder, did the text go around and say nobody?
Oh, I'd say so. I'd definitely say so. You're telling me the Dublin players are no different than every other squad in the country. That absolutely they'd love to send a tweet out, because like, they don't get to tweet that often. So, like, even sending one, and especially for Paul Flynn, who is incredibly highly regarded, I just think it's wrong, and I think it's gone too far.
Yeah, and everybody has a different story to tell, so it would be nice. Like, they all have a different story, they all have a different angle. You know, they have something to say, and then what that does as well is it's a bigger vehicle for other people to get involved and give a bit more praise to somebody who definitely deserves it. But you have to say that it's the easiest media manager job in the world. There's nothing to manage. It's just don't do anything, and that's their job. Like, you know, you're not allowed to tweet, job done. What a handy job.
So he's not the media manager, he's the media blocker. So he doesn't manage anything, he just says no. Like, I mean, that's his job. Well done, blocker. Like, the media blocker, that's what we'll call him, right? We'll call him the media blocker. Anyways, like, you might think this is a little bit hypocritical, but obviously they want to keep the hype down. Dublin want to keep the hype down, and we know that. everybody else seems to want to crank the hype up on Dublin, right? So I'm going to start a new slot on the show. It's going to run throughout the summer, and it's called the Dublin Hype Train. And this is brought to you in association with Jim Gavin and his media blocker. Right? So this week, on this week's show, we have Liam Kearns. So we've had Henry Shefflin and JJ Delaney in the last 2 weeks. And this is just going to keep going throughout the summer, lads. So we might as well have a slot. So Liam Kearns is turning the heat up on the 5 in a row. And he says, the only thing I would say, I was around when Kerry lost the 5 in a row. And I didn't know Liam Kearns was on the squad that day, actually, the Kerry squad when they won the 5 in a row. The last 2, he was on the squad. He says, I got on the panel myself as a sub for the 3 in a row. I was carried by the greats there for a couple of years. I was one of those extras. But I would never have seen Kerry beaten with that 5 in a row team. And I certainly didn't think Offaly would beat them. I thought they had a team that had all the answers and they got caught. The same thing applies to Dublin. They're going to have to get everything right, and there's going to be huge pressure. They're all going to talk about the pressure, lads. Everyone's talking about it, and I say everywhere they go, the closer it gets. The further this thing goes, and the more talk there is about Dublin, the weight of history is going to weigh heavily on them. This is a clear tactic from the rest of the country. Finally starting to believe that anyone but Dublin kind of thing. Maybe all these lads are right.
What was the context for the Liam Kearns? Because was he asked that question because he was involved with the Kerry panel?
He must have been.
Or are people just going to throw this question to everybody?
Everyone. What do you imagine it would be like? Is probably imagine what this is going to be like, lads, in August as the Super 8s heat up and All Ireland semi-final or final. It's going to, because I think deep down people want to see a new winner. I think deep down a lot of people, for the reason of the media blocker and all that, haven't taken Dublin to their heart. I, in a way, don't really mind now. I kind of wanted Mayo to win one. That's kind of the way I am. I don't think Mayo can win one anymore now, so that's kind of gone. I would have liked to see Mayo win one. Sorry, Conor.
That's all right.
But
for
them to beat Kerry or for them to beat Galway or Donegal, I was kind of Mayo. I kind of wanted to beat Dublin in our final. That doesn't make too much difference to me, but I can see the heat being ramped right up on them.
I think people just like champions to get a test, like like last year felt very easy for Dublin, or easier than other years. Like they did sort of walk through it all, and when they do beat Mayo after the replays or after a 1 point slog fest, like you sort of respect them a whole lot more, and we all know that's there. Like, so I hope, as a neutral anyway, to get a tough Super 8 group, because otherwise, like this hype and this pressure or whatever else, it's not going to come into play until the semi-final. Yeah, and then they're only 140 minutes away from an all.
And there's not much lead into the semi-final. It's only a week.
Yeah, so if they get a good group, like if they get 2 good teams in the Super 8, so they'll give them a test, a tough away match. Then, we can enjoy a few weeks of ramping up the pressure.
I think it's the media that's going to ramp it up on them, because these lads aren't saying this for no reason. They're all being asked about it. Yeah. So, it is the media that hype up Dublin. I've said this in interviews before. It's not necessarily Dublin. That's why Jim Gavin has the blocker, so that you don't fuel the media who want to know about Dublin and who do this. So it's basically us, journalists, not us in this room, but we're going to comment on the people. So we are going to contribute to the side. Yeah. All right, listen. Up next is Shane Hogan. Okay, so against Mayo on Sunday, Shane Hogan is one of 6 homegrown players that's going to be on the New York panel, and he joins us on the line now. Shane, how's it going?
Yeah, not too bad, Colin. How are you over there, bud?
All good, all good. What's the weather like over there?
It is miserable. Hopefully Mayo will bring over some of that nice weather you guys are getting over there. But right now it's cold, it's raining, and it's dark. I'm actually a bit scared. Jesus,
right, because we were talking on the show here, and the forecast for Sunday apparently is rain as well. Is that right?
Yeah. It's something now that we're starting to get used to here. I think the past 2 or 3 years it's been absolutely miserable for the day of the game.
Right, okay. So I suppose in general people say a bad day suits the underdog. I don't know if you subscribe to that.
Yeah, actually it kind of helps us out a little bit more, especially playing on the turf. The ball goes a little faster. It's something I don't know if Mayo will be used to it, but playing in the rain, I know that it'll be something they're used to being played in Connacht. It's always raining over there. So
yeah, well, that's true.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Hopefully it'll give us a point or two.
Do you put much advantage into the artificial pitch, Shane? Because like you said, when it's raining, obviously on a grass pitch there's a really pronounced skid off it. Like, does it bounce up more on the pitch, or it's not the same skid maybe that the footballers over here would be used to?
On a nice day, it'll bounce probably the same as it is on grass. But when it starts to rain, it's something that it's kind of just like a bullet. The minute it hits the ground, it goes from about 5 miles an hour to about 100. It's something that if you're not prepared for, it can catch you surprisingly.
Okay, that's an interesting one to keep your eye out for. So you were born in New York. So your father is from Tipperary. Obviously, your mother is from America. I'm guessing your grandparents are from Roscommon and Meath.
Yeah. On my mom's side, my dad's side, Tipperary as well.
Oh right, okay. So your dad's side is from Tipperary, and his parents are from Tipperary, and your mother's parents are from Roscommon and Meath. That's how it works.
Yep. I'm a bit of a mutt.
So do you have a team at home that you support or anything? I suppose all three of those maybe.
I'd say Tip would be the top, and then Roscommon and Meath would follow. But yeah, I'd follow all three of them.
Right, okay. So I've been reading that you've been playing since you were 5, and you really got the bug in 2003 when New York almost beat Leitrim. They went to extra time, and obviously that happened last year as well, not to be confused with last year, but in 2003, and you saw that game and you caught the bug at that stage.
Yeah, no, that really was one of the things I really wanted me to give it a go, to try and make that team one day. Just seeing New York compete against an Irish team, something that I really wanted to do. And last year it was so close, and just the fact that we put in so much work and we came so close was absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah, because I've spent enough time out in America, 5 summers, that I know you on a Sunday morning for the championship games you have to go down to a bar and pay in and stuff like that. So is that how you would have gone down with your father watching these games? He would have obviously been heading down to watch them, and you tag along.
Yeah, he'd be down in the bars for every match, and he'd be bringing me and my 2 brothers along, and my grandparents would be there as well. He'd be there pretty much cheering on Tip, but pretty much any game he'd be there to watch. And then usually we'd go to Gaelic Park after, and we'd see all the guys playing. So yeah, he got me really into the GAA very early. My brother Connor was playing then when I was about 4. I didn't even want to play Gaelic football at first. They asked me to play, and I said, I don't know, I don't think so. And then when I saw him playing, I was like, oh, this is actually something I think I'd enjoy. So I got it. I started playing then, and it was just something I fell in love with.
Right, okay. So the love must have been strong, Shane, is the point I'm trying to make. Because when you went to school, obviously, there's no Gaelic football. There's a lot of other sports. There's peer pressure. There's wanting to hang around with your friends that are playing other sports. So I suppose there was a big decision to make there.
Yeah, the only good part now being in Woodlawn is it's mostly all the Irish parents as well. So they're pushing their kids to play Gaelic football. So all my friends were pretty much playing it as well.
Okay.
So if I wanted to hang out with my friends, I'd be playing Gaelic with them. And a lot of them now are still playing, so we got a really good connection to Gaelic football through our parents.
Yeah, no, definitely. Come here, I was reading, I didn't realise that the juvenile structure in New York was so strong. There's 15 juvenile clubs, 5 of them play hurling and 14 play football. So there's about 2,500 children playing. And you won the Féile the under 14 Féile in 2017. Teams like Shannon Gales and Queens are able to field sides comprised almost entirely of players born in the US. And I'm just wondering, with all that brilliant underage success, why there's only 6 from New York still feeding in on the squad?
Well, growing up now in my age, it wasn't what it was today. Like, there was only about 8 maybe teams. So it was a bit different. The development officers now are doing a very, very good job. Simon Gillespie with the football, and then Mickey Quigg with the hurling. They do tireless work, and it's getting stronger. I help ref, and I see what kids now, like, through the ages are starting to become and develop and play like. So I'd say soon enough there'll be even more. But you know what, the biggest challenge is when kids hit the age of about 17, 18, when they go off to college.
Yeah.
They start playing all these other sports in high school, baseball, football, basketball. They'll start to go away to college now and play those sports. And it's very tough now once they go away to play that to get them back into the fold of Gaelic football. Gaelic football sort of becomes the afterthought. So that's really the biggest killer of how we lose like a lot of the good underage development.
Yeah, because I was reading a stat that in New York's first 5 years competing in Connacht, I think it started in '99, they had 5 Americans make it onto the pitch, and in the past 5 years only 3 have made it onto the pitch. So that stat would make it look like it's not necessarily improving, and maybe it's for that point that in America travel times are so long. It's not like Ireland, you go to college in Dublin and you come home an hour to play your Gaelic football. Like, that's completely blown out of the water over there, I suppose.
Oh yeah, no, the kids now, like, they'll go mostly away, like, to school. There's a few colleges in New York that, if we're lucky, locally, that they'll play for. But for the most part, like, they'll travel, like, south to all the big colleges down there, to the West Coast. It'd be, if they wanted to come back, you'd have to take a 2-hour plane ride or something. I know we have a guy playing in our club. He plays American football, but he actually travels back. But he has to take an 1.5-hour plane ride for every match on Sunday, which is absolutely incredible that he does it. But I mean, geez, what a pain.
Yeah, geez, what a pain is right. What club are you?
I play for St. Barnabas.
Okay, all right. I don't think they were there when I was out there. Then you enough, or have they come up through from the junior intermediate ranks?
So when were we junior? We were junior back in, I think it was 2000. When was it? Probably about 2011, 2012.
Okay.
And then within 2 years, we'd won the intermediate. So yeah, we're about 3 or 4 years now in senior.
All right, okay, very good. I'm an old man here, Shane. It was 2001 or 2 when I was in New York, so don't mind me. I'm well out of the New York loop now. Come here, but like, I mean, the feel-good factor must be around New York football. Like, you must have noticed a big change. You made your debut in 2012. You're only 17, which is incredible going. And the last 3 years you've had unbelievable moral victories. Now, whether you look at it and go, we should have beaten Leitrim, definitely. We had a great chance of beating Roscommon, gave Sligo a scare. Are you looking at this as in a missed opportunity, or are you looking at how well you're building?
It's kind of both. At first, the day of the game, we'll say, wow, we did such a great job. We're like, well, we had them. We competed, we gave it all, and we kind of we'll all stick together on that night, and then the next day we'll just be sitting there be like, you know what, it really turns into disappointment. Then we're like, we should have had this. If we had 1 or 2 things go away, we could have had this. But it was, hopefully now it's starting to spur more interest. Seeing now that more and more American players, like now we're up to 6, which I think is the most that I've seen. If we can keep getting that interest to grow, if we keep getting the results, the interest will be there, and hopefully we can continue to play in the Connacht Championship. It's my goal is to kind of just hopefully keep getting us like these results. And even if I was to never win a game, if I could keep us, in this competition, keep us playing against these teams, to one day see a team mostly of Americans, that'd be the ultimate goal.
Yeah, but you really have to do that though, Shane, for your own interest as well, because like I saw Justin O'Halloran talking about losing 10 or 11 of last year's team, and Karl Compton's talking about, I suppose, the view is that New York aren't as strong as in other years, and like without the guaranteed homegrown, and I spoke with Kieran Deely this year, the London manager, without that base of homegrown, like you don't know where you're coming or going at the start of every year.
Oh yeah, no, it's tough. I make the joke that I think I played with the most inter-county players in GAA history. The turnover rate is ridiculous out here. I think somebody came up with the stat and told me that like since the last time Mayo was out, there might only be 1 or 2 New York players. When was that, 5 years ago? Which for any county team is an unbelievably ridiculous rate of turnover.
Yeah.
And then Mayo, I think, have 14. I think they said still playing from the last time they were here. So I mean, trying to compete with that is it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, it's definitely. Well, Mayo are a bit of a freak in that their team has completely stuck together. But I take your point. And Daniel Flynn was out with you this year as well. So you had the excitement, I suppose, of having such a brilliant player as him, and then he goes home, and then immigration isn't. The economy's going well in Ireland here, so the same amount or same numbers aren't going out every year. And then the GAA changed their rules to stop players leaving in mid-championship over here as well. So like, I mean, there's a lot of factors been conspiring against New York.
Yeah, there's only real two options. So one, I either go over and ruin the economy, or two, we're going to have to, really do a great job with our homegrown players. That's really the future, as you were saying, and we need to kind of stick together now. Like the six of us, Mikey Cregan has been with New York now. I think he said his first championship debut was 2008, because he's old.
He's an outlier, yeah. He's definitely bringing it back towards the homegrown players and the lack of turnover. But he's definitely an outlier.
Yeah, no, he's a great representative of what New York is and what guys should strive to be. Guys, he's in his mid-30s, but he comes back every week. So he's for somebody I really admire. But the four other boys now that are coming on, they're young, they want to play, they're very passionate for the game. So hopefully we can kind of form the core that we can build around.
Yeah, do you notice a bit more of a prestige around New York football than maybe when you started against Sligo back in 2012 after the last 3 years? Like you're given a little bit more respect, and even for the players over there wanting to be part of it, where in other years maybe they didn't.
Especially the Roscommon game. I remember Roscommon was coming off that great run into Division 1. It was very tough to see New York really with any hope. So a lot of guys really weren't interested in doing the panel. But then, for the next 2 years, especially after we gave them a great scare, we were able to get really good numbers, guys wanting to try out, willing to put in the work to try and make the panel, and just coming so short really hurt. But, with teams coming out now like Mayo or Galway, it's a little tougher now trying to get guys to want to commit to the panel, because they I guess they don't want to get the hammering that people are expecting us to get. But the guys that we have now that are coming into the panel, they're not going to want to suffer, any beating. So our goal really is to try and make this game as uncomfortable as we can for Mayo, and hopefully we get a result that will show the work that we've put in.
Yeah, another challenge for New York obviously is the lack of challenge games and league games. So the only games you really can get are internal games, and if you don't get enough fellas to commit, you don't get good 15 versus 15 games.
Yeah, the immigration problem really hurts us with that. Guys, if we were to try and play, there's always the talks of us having to maybe going back one day playing in the league, but with guys with visa situations,
yeah,
it'd be almost impossible. But over the past few years, we've had Flynn come out to give us a few games, Donegal, Cavan. Those games really helped because after a while playing all the inter squad games, you mark the same guy every day. It kind of loses its luster. And, it could kind of show last year, the lack of matches, especially towards the end of the game. Maybe if we had a few games to, where we were in the same situation where we were in the lead, we'd know kind of, a bit of cuteness, where to run out the clock. Maybe the results could have been different over the past few years. But hopefully one day we can get a situation that could benefit us with trying to get games.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, come here, after Donald Trump became president, and we know his attitude towards immigrants, are the Irish starting to come out of their houses, or the ones with some of the dodgy visas?
A little bit, yeah. They're still flocking over to Gaelic Park, which is good.
Yeah, well, that really is where Donald Trump should send his his people if he wanted to catch anyone.
I joke with the boys at training that I'm trying to become a cop. I said the first thing I'll do is I'll go to Gaelic Park and I'll make my quota for in the first month.
Yeah, no,
it's easiest promotion ever.
Yeah, just wait inside the door so they don't even know until they come through the turnstile and then they're caught, right? So that's it.
Yeah, the only way they can get through is if they play for St. Barnabas.
You can strike a deal with them. Come here, just to finish up with the game. Like, the draw hasn't been kind to you. Like, I mean, although you could have made that case, you would have made that case against Roscommon, like you correctly pointed out 3 years ago. So, like, I mean, I don't know if you've seen the Mayo team. So it has been picked So Donald Vaughan, Diarmuid O'Connor, Killian O'Connor, there's a few big names not starting. They're obviously still a huge player here in Ireland and they're league champions. So are you I know when I was a player, even if it was an impossible task, I'd still convince myself that we have a chance to win it. I'm sure that's the way you're thinking. But, a good performance here, would be staying within, a close distance from Mayo. Like, are you actually thinking that you could possibly pull this one off?
Well, Justin put it best in an interview. He said if the underdog was to never win, why would you even bother trying? We know that this is going to be, a near impossible task, really, trying to compete with Mayo, because, Mayo have been, such a great representative for the GAA over the past, pretty much for the past decade. They've been to 4 All-Irelands, winning the league this year and winning it, in such a fashion where they were able to play, 38 guys or something like that. So not only are they a very skilled team, they're a deep team as well. So, they are able to replace, Killian O'Connor's and guys of that caliber. So we know that we're going to need everything to go right on the day, and probably more to try and get a result. But, any positive results really will be, any moral victory would be a positive for New York.
Yeah, exactly. Well, come here, Shane. Thanks very much for taking the call, and best of luck on Sunday.
Thank you very much, Colin.
Okay, so our first Paddy Power predictions of the championship, lads, and let's be honest, it's not the most exciting slot.
I'm feeling good about this one.
So, Mayo are 1 to 200 to win this one, which is off the charts. Can we see New York in any way troubling them? Probably not. The big news we have from Mayo, Connor, is that Diarmuid O'Connor is not going to play. We have actually the Mayo team there. You might want to call it out.
So it's Rob Henley, Chris Barrett, Brendan Harrison, Keith Higgins, Paddy Durkin, Lee Keegan, James McCormack, Matty Ruan, Aidan O'Shea, Evan Regan, Jason Doherty, Fergal Boland, Kevin McLaughlin, Darren Cohen and James Carr. So I think there's only a couple, maybe 3 changes from the team that won the league.
3 changes, yeah.
So O'Connor,
Vaughan is out.
Don't think he's injured, but not 100% sure on that. James McCormack is in. Evan Regan is in the half forward line. And I'm struggling.
That's for Diarmuid O'Connor.
Off the top of my head, I think that could be it.
That was the full forward line, I think. Yeah. So it's not a forward line that's going to strike fear into any All Ireland contender. There's no doubt about that. Evan Regan, I'm not sure if he's played wing forward too much, but I can't see him working up and down the field.
I can just see an automatic switch there with Kevin McLaughlin and
but he seems to want to play McLaughlin out.
He does. I only think it because Evan Regan is named a 10.
Yeah,
I can't see him playing a 10. Well, I could be wrong, but I don't see that happening on Sunday.
Yeah. Okay. So look, it's a team strong enough to be beating New York. There's no doubt about that. So they're getting all their injuries cleared up. So what are the we've talked about New York anyways, having 10 or 11 of the starting team from last year gone. So that's a big one. They have the home advantage, and then we have the whole travelling over to New York, and James Horan's on record for saying they messed that up the last time they went over. Do you remember that going on, Connor? I think they got logistics wrong. They were waiting around on buses. There was all sorts of stuff.
There was a few issues. I think there was a few issues with a couple of fundraisers and stuff like that, which seemed to have been planned well in advance.
That was Roscommon too, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Mayo only went over, as far as I know, today, I think, which I thought was about the latest you could leave it to, acclimatise to the time change and all that sort of stuff. And as far as I know, they're hanging around for a few days afterwards, and they're not back till close to next weekend. So maybe getting a bit of preparation in for later on. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think so as well. Yeah.
So Seamus O'Shea had a wedding last weekend.
Yes. Yeah.
Rob Henley, I think, was the MC. Aidan was
best man.
He was best man. So they're coming off a nice celebration there last week. So hopefully they
were
all
in the tidal recovery
pool
in Belmullet. So that'll shake anything out of your system. So
no, very disrespectful to New York now for Seamus O'Shea to fix his wedding the week before their game. If that's not going to be posted up, those wedding photos are going to be posted up on the dressing room wall. Look, there's no point in saying it's Mayo for me.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Mayo. I was thinking about the draw, but tough place to go and all that, but I'm going to go with Mayo as well.
What the handicap is, 19-20 points, I think.
Is it 19-20?
See, that's
what I was going to just check there. I hadn't got it on my notes.
Mayo won by 22 points in 2014, and without wanting to disrespect New York too much, you'd be expecting something similar.
If it's 19 or 20, I'd nearly float for New York in that
one.
They beat
the handicap, I think, 15 out of the last 20 times or something in New York. I think Don't Foul had that on Twitter, so that might be worth it. It's meant to be wet in New York on Sunday, and the AstroTurf pitch might cause a bit of hassle. New York might be more used to it than the Mayo, so maybe, but you'd expect them to get close enough to beating the handicap anyway.
Alright, okay, so there's 2 more big games on this weekend. So London-Galway is the next one. That's in Ruislip at 3:30. Kevin Walsh, poor Kevin Walsh, has been interviewed again, and he's been asked, what question is he being asked?
Style
About
play the
defensive
Galway.
football.
Yeah, I'd say the poor man is ready to pull on the next fella who says it to him. So I didn't see the question. So here's his answer. I have to move away from that because it doesn't really matter. I think most of that comes from a few empty vessels, and empty vessels make the most noise. So we have to be very careful that we get the best out of our team, and it's quite obvious that all of the top teams are very similar to ourselves. We can't change anyone's opinion. It's very easy to say things, but if everything was balanced, we would say we are very similar to most of the top teams. And Kevin is probably a little bit right in that, as regards they'll all end up in a similar setup. But the difference with Galway is that they're dropping off back into zones still, which seems to be a bit of a tired setup where, you know, Tyrone have moved on from that. Mayo don't do it, Kerry don't do it, Dublin don't do it. You know, Dublin maybe do it a little bit. They'll drop back goal side of their man and turn and face him, you know, that kind of a way. But they're not dropping back into zones around the halfway line. And I think that's the little next step for Galway's evolution that they need to bring to this year's championship, to be seen as big players. Was it Liam Kearns this week in that same interview said that he thought Galway were a team that could beat Dublin? Galway have massive respect, but there's always the caveat of stop dropping back into the zones. That's too easy. You'll never beat Dublin dropping off them and inviting them up to the 45, because then they're just comfortable there. Yeah. You have to try and put them under enough pressure that they're kick passing a little bit, and then they're going astray, and then you're back on the attack. I don't think Galway have got that memo, but again, we kept qualifying that during the championship or during the league and saying that they have been playing with a very weak hand throughout the league. So maybe we will see that evolution, and we're a bit unfair on Kevin Walsh that we haven't seen his full team yet, and still there's some criticism of Galway.
Yeah, because I was just thinking it'd be really interesting now when Kieran Malloy comes in, and probably Dylan Wall, and you know, because they'll be taking off and they'll be so influential in attack, and I don't mind if a half hour's dropping back to cover for them, but it just gives them a bit more impetus and they're not stuck in the shell, which I think Gareth Bradshaw, as good as he's been going forward throughout like the years, I think he's sort of a bit more conservative now with Galway, but I don't think Kieran Malloy would be, or Dylan Wall would be, so maybe it will change when
Killian McDade, if he goes wing back as well. So they're the 3 options for attacking wing backs, and that was the big thing I had about Galway, is they needed more pace from the half back line. Definitely, but he's constantly answering those questions, and it's hard to know, you know, what to say about it until we see them in the championship. We won't learn much again with London this weekend. Do you know the betting on this one, Connor?
I didn't see the betting for this one, but I would assume it's heavily in Galway's favour.
Well, it's 12-1 London, and it's 1-50 Galway, so not quite at the 1-200 that Mayo are, and the handicap here is 14. No disrespect to London, I can see Galway blowing away that 14 pretty quickly. I was surprised that it was so low, really. I know London are making big improvements, and they can put it up to likes of Louth in the qualifiers, and they can put it up to Division 4 teams, and that's great improvement for them. But we're talking about potential All-Ireland contender, that really, if Galway aren't going over and beating that handicap, they'd have to be maybe wondering about themselves. Is that disrespectful to London, or is that just being fair?
No, I think it's realistic. I give London a chance with the handicap, but only because I think that Galway might win by 10 to 12 points as opposed to 14. I think it'll be comfortable.
Yeah, it'll be comfortable. What about you, Conan?
12-1, 1-50. It's a bit stingy from Paddy, isn't it? I would have thought that London would be a bit longer, considering Galway are so short. Not that it matters, because I wouldn't back London anyway.
Yeah, so. Not that it matters, and not that you know anything about betting. So like, it could be anything.
End of discussion.
Yeah. So I don't know why I threw over anything to do with betting.
So I'm going to go with Galway.
Go with Galway. Yeah, well, that's what you do know, right? So that's what I know. The only other big game at the weekend is in Stradbally at 2:00 next Saturday, lads, and that is the Laois Masters over 40s.
This one of the 3 big games you were talking
welcoming
about, right?
you were confused with the 3, right? So they're welcoming the All-Ireland champions Dublin to Laois, and this is kicking off at 2:00. It's free in, right? All Masters championship games are free in up until semi-final stage. So the message is to go to this game, cheer on Laois, beating the All-Ireland champions. We haven't done it in a long time. And that's really it. So we're hoping to have everybody out. We've had a few challenge games, and probably the most we've had would be 7 or 8 starters in the challenge games. We're having challenge games instead of training because you just can't get anyone to train. It's very hard. Over 40, lads don't care. If you're the good lads are still playing with their club, and then their commitment is club. Whereas the lads that aren't fit aren't playing with a club, and they're happy to go, but they're not necessarily lads that are going to be able to beat Dublin. So it's a strange competition, but it's a competition that are really, really looking forward to, and it's great. Like, there's a part of it that's fantastic when you're 40 that you get to meet up. It's like mini reunions every time you go back onto the field. And even the last day, Noel Garvin came on in midfield and Chris Conway came on in the forwards, and you just little memories of me, him, and Chris linking up in championship. It's a lovely thing. It's a lovely thing, and hopefully we'll have a lot of our bigger names back for next week on the starting team, like Tom Kelly. We hopefully have
Tom Kelly,
Kevin Fitzpatrick, Darren Rooney. That could be that was 2003 half back line. They're all bang on 40, 41. So they're all playing with the club. Then you'll have myself, Greg Ramsbottom in the forwards. You'll have Shane Cook, who used to play with Laois. You'll have Chris Conway. You know, but we need everyone to show up because we don't have the biggest squad. And then you hear Dublin are bringing down 30 down to 7 because a friend of mine had to ring them up about making food for them after the game. They have to be fed and everything. And so how many are you bringing down? We're expecting maybe 17, 18, 30. Big super bus,
Chambers bus,
big backroom team of 18 or 19 masseuses, physios, you name it.
Did anyone bite at your tweet the other day? Any of the Dublin
Mick
lads
O'Keefe. Mick O'Keefe's still kicking away. Mick must be
I thought the media blocker might be in place for the
I
over
don't know if the
40s
blocker, just a text goes around, do not reply to practice.
Who's playing for Dublin? Like, who's the big Dublin?
Well, Ray Cosgrove and Shane Ryan, they were the big age, but like
Shane
Mick
Ryan,
O'Keefe replied back to my tweet. Derek Byrne would be good, but he'd have been on and off the team. They're not a star-studded team. They have a lot of fellas who are very fit and flying at a club level, which is really the big thing, lads. You can have all the big names you want. If you're not still playing club or at a decent level of fitness, you're useless to your team. So they have a lot of teams, but like Mick was trying to crank up the pressure back on us because I said we're going to knock them off their perch. But he was saying their team is made up of a period of Dublin players from a period when they were useless, and our team is made up of a period of Laois's greatest ever team. So, like he said, you don't beat us. So straight away we're like, for God's sake, now we've got all the pressure on us.
No, but hang on, Dublin are going for 2 in a row.
Okay, well I'll reply back to him now today, and I'll put all the pressure back on. What a load of nonsense. But like, I mean, people still play those games. But anyways, that's it. It's more of a message to anyone from Laois, because anyone from Dublin that listens, you've probably got a few teams that might be more of interest than this Masters team. But us in Laois, maybe some of them might like to go out and see, like you said, Tom Kelly. Your face lit up when you heard Tom Kelly. So Joe Higgins, very disappointing. His hips are gone, so he couldn't show up. Would love to have been on the field with Joe, one of the greatest. And Beano's not overage. He's not 40 till next year. So there's a few of the...
Might give him a fake name maybe.
And just play Beano. Right, listen, that's all we've time for. We'll be back. Hopefully we'll do a show Monday, and just without giving away a production meeting. It's not going to be easy to get a Mayo player, because when we record at 12 o'clock it's going to be like 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. over there, and I say the Mayo players will have sore heads. So how will I get a Mayo interview? Might try and get a Galway interview. Could we imagine Mayo and Galway will win those games? And I don't like to ring fellas who have lost the championship game. So there you are, production meeting held live on the air. Right, okay, that's it. We'll talk to you Monday. Good luck.